We're in day 26 of the government shutdown, and because of that, workers who have been either furloughed, they're not working and not being paid, or they're working and not being paid, have had to go to sometimes extreme lengths to make ends meet. And so today on the show, I want to profile a couple of those stories. So the first has to do with pawn shops. Apparently seeing an increase in how many government employees every single day are going in and selling their belongings at the pawn shop. So this is one individual in Chicago, Randy Cohen, who says that Monday the shutdown forced one worker to part with a prized van. The pawn shop owner agrees to hold on to items for 60 days. He says that he assigns a lower interest rate when he hears shutdown stories. Now that is out there, expect everyone to say they're involved in the shutdown, but wow. It is nice of him that he does that, I guess. He said about those individuals who are selling, instruments, furniture, cars, all of that, I feel sorry for them. Listen, they gotta pay their mortgage, they gotta pay a car payment. And he says of those who are being driven to sell even like prized possessions, things that they have no interest in selling, he says that it's for a rainy day and it's raining for them. Think about it, thank God they had stuff like this. But again, for those who do, not everyone has a car that they can sell for $6,500 or can afford to sell their car because many of them still have to use the car to go to the job that is not paying them.
78% of federal government workers live paycheck to paycheck. Just let that sink in and understand what this means for them. 26 days with this government shutdown, they've gone an entire pay period without a paycheck. You have a huge portion of this country overall unable to afford a $400 emergency. I mean, for all the stories that you hear coming from the Trump administration, from CNBC, from all of these, establishment news organizations arguing that we're in this great economic situation because we have a low unemployment rate, the economy is very, very good for a select few in the United States. But when you look at wages, when you look at the number of people living paycheck to paycheck, when you look at the insane record level of consumer debt, people are struggling right now and they can't afford to miss one paycheck. And to know that the Trump administration is planning on how they're gonna make it through February with this government shutdown gives you a sense that these federal workers are in for a lot more pain moving forward.
Potentially much longer. I mean, if they're talking about taxes and getting refunds and stuff, I mean, that for some people is months into the future. So let's go into another one, individually even more tragic perhaps. So this is about Mallory Lorge, who early this month was down to the last 2 vials of insulin for her type 1 diabetes when she decided to ration the drug she needs to survive because as a federal government employee out of work in a weeks-long shutdown, she could no longer afford the $300 copay for a new supply. And so she talks about how she began to feel like the symptoms and side effects of not having the medication that she needs for her condition and knew that she needed medical help, but also couldn't afford that. And so had to just ignore it, feeling the creeping symptoms that could hypothetically lead to significant side effects that are very costly themselves or potentially even death. And she described that was our breaking point, she says.
So
there's one more quote though that she goes on about that. She says, I knew I couldn't afford an ambulance ride. I couldn't afford to be in the emergency room. I said, I am going to bed and I hope I wake up. I was pretty scared. I was like, I am going to die in my sleep. It was a choice between getting further into debt and going bankrupt or dying, and I took the dying. It's very easy for know-nothing Republicans and libertarians on social media to mock these people and say, I don't care, they're government workers, those are bad people, why are they doing that? Or why weren't they more responsible like me? Even though we know statistically the people making those comments are also one lost paycheck away from getting kicked out of their apartments or losing their cars. But these are real people. They're real Democrats, they're real Republicans, they're real healthy people, and they're real sick people in some cases. And there's a lot of them, there are literally hundreds of thousands.
When it comes to those on the right, the argument that you hear over and over again in regard to people who are unable to provide for their families, unable to pay their bills, who rely on government assistance, the argument that we hear is that they're either lazy, they don't take personal responsibility, they don't pick themselves up by the bootstraps. I mean, you hear all of this, there's the blame game going on and there's a lot of stereotyping going on. But these are people who have full-time jobs. These are people who literally went to school in a lot of cases in order to do this profession. Yes, they work for the federal government, but they have important jobs, they provide services to the American people, and they're working full time, right? And so this is at no fault of their own. The dysfunction that we're seeing in our federal government right now is no fault of theirs, right? They don't deserve any of what's going on right now. The idea of someone unable to afford insulin, even though they're a full-time federal worker, is so devastating. And so, look, you egged me on, so I'm gonna have to read one of the tweets that pretty much enraged me earlier this week, because
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. So, Dave Rubin, like it's very easy to sit in your studio at your home, right? That's been in part funded by Koch brothers and other millionaires and billionaires who have given you money to sell out and be the pathetic person that you are now. But he tweeted about these federal workers as if they're the ones that we should be blaming. Politicians on both sides have been saying they'll get back pay this time. Either way, most people aren't affected, and that's just a fact. And those who are affected maybe should think about getting other jobs that are less dependent on the whims of politicians. And maybe in a perfect world for Dave Rubin, everybody would just get funded by the Koch brothers to spew nonsense libertarian propaganda. But these are real Americans who work very hard and did nothing wrong, right? And so to tell them like, yeah, just go find another job. Like it's so insulting. I don't know, days like this make me feel such deep despair. Again, not just because of the dysfunction we're seeing in government, but because of some of the reaction you get from some American people, right?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, if anyone knows Mallory Lorge, they should ask her why she didn't get a billionaire patron who would give them a career in exchange for pretending that they either know about or indeed are even interested in politics.
It's just, I don't know, it just makes me, so are we great yet? I wanna know, right? I love referencing a shirt that Brett wears.
How about make America function again?
Exactly, I would really like that.
And by the way, so let's also talk about, we're zoomed into the individual workers, now let's zoom all the way out. I saw a headline earlier today, and it was a Trump administration official who said that our estimates of how much this is hurting the economy had to be revised up a little, he says. I believe it was on Fox News. And so later on, more details came out, and the a little was double. So how much is it actually hurting the economy, this shutdown? The administration, and by the way, this is not some crazy left-wing organization. This is the Trump administration say that they've now calculated that the shutdown reduces quarterly economic growth by 0.13 percentage points every single week. The economy has already lost nearly half a percentage point of growth from the 4-week shutdown. To put it in perspective, economic growth for the first quarter last year was 2.2%. So the shutdown alone has killed potentially a quarter of all of the economic growth in the country. And to some people that might seem crazy. How is that even possible? I mean, yeah, it's 800,000 workers, but that's not that significant. Well, it turns out that these federal agencies that have been shut down, they don't just operate inside of their little buildings in DC, they contract out to a lot of companies. How many companies? 10,000 or more companies, and those companies are effectively making very little or no money during this time. Every week, I have read the contracts that privately owned companies would be getting from these agencies is over $200 million. It is just poof, evaporated. And then because the workers aren't getting money and they're not going out and spending money, all of the other industries that rely on their income being fed out into buying clothes and cars and entertainment and food and all of that stuff, that has dried up too. And so, man, the Republican philosophy on the economy has always been BS and a lie and a ruse to reallocate money to the rich. But at least they pretended they cared about economic growth. Now they have found the perfect way to stop it in its tracks.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Oftentimes there are arguments regarding stimulating the economy. It leaves out the importance of a middle class, the actual consumers who go out there and spend on goods and services. But who knows, maybe they'll learn a lesson from this. I doubt it, but we'll see.
Probably not.
Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.